testified that method 2 was used, but the interrogatory answer number 13 says method 1 was used, and perhaps you're going to address that, but I just wanted to make sure that I knew which one I was supposed to be looking at.
I have a look.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, which interrogatory number are you referring to?
I'm looking at interrogatory response number 13.
Your Honor, it's because, and I'll get into this with Mr. Pearsall. I assume Mr. Marshall will. It's because when they did the original calculation at 48%, they used method 1 and then they changed over to method 2. But there'll be a significant amount of testimony on why we have changing methods, because
That's
I believe that is with respect to the decision, the application.
That's fine, as long as I just wanted to make sure I didn't mishear. I didn't mean to direct the course of the testimony. So we are now ready for cross-examination by Attorney Marshall of Mr. Cook. Mr. Cook, I remind you, you're still under oath.
Thank you. Mr. Cook, you testified that you were present at all 3 of the public hearings that were held on this matter?
That's correct.
And you testified that there were members of the public present at all 3 of those public hearings?
Yes, there were.
Could you, I know you were asked on direct at least about one of the meetings. Could you estimate for us, approximately how many members of the public at each of the 3 meetings?
There were, it's difficult to say because obviously a public meeting was not to discuss solely our project. Based on the number of people that were speaking, I'd say it varied because there were 2 locations. And I'd say approximately 10 to 15.
Okay, thank you. And at any of these public hearings, while the members of the public were speaking, do you recall anybody bringing up anything about property values?
Yes, I do.
Would it be fair to say that came up at the 3rd hearing, the one held in November?
Yeah, I think that would be fair.
Do you recall this member of the public making comments about property value, identifying herself as any type of professional in real estate?
No. The main person that spoke about property values was a gentleman who lived on the corner who was selling his house at the time.
Do you recall at any of the 3 public hearings, any member of the public identifying themselves as somebody with particularized experience in real estate?
No.
If you could, I'm going to go to Exhibit 2 again, to the bylaws.
Okay, hold on 2 seconds. Okey doke, I'm ready.
More specifically, I'm going to go to section 10.7, beginning on page 10-12 at the bottom. It's the large scale ground mounted solar.
Okay, please proceed.
So, Mr. Cook, obviously you're familiar with this section.
Yes.
And you were intimately involved in the preparation of the ASD solar proposal.
I'm not sure I'd classify it as intimately. I was involved in it, but the efforts were led by Evan Turner and Jeff Brandt.
Did you have input, both technical and input to other aspects of the project prior to it being a final version being written?
It was to the application.
Yes,
Or the final plans?
we'll say to the first application.
No, I had limited involvement in that part.
Did you review it prior to it being submitted to the town?
I reviewed some sections, not the complete application.
Fair to say the sections that you reviewed were all technical, relating to the energy production?
There's no explicit part about energy production in the application, just the capacity. I was involved primarily in the discussions over wetland crossings that were done with the Conservation Commission and construction questions.
Were you involved in discussions of matters concerning the visual screening of this project?
Yes, I was.
In the original application?
Not in the original docket, no. But as we increased the amount of screening required, I had to provide cost estimates to ensure that they could be done feasibly because of the unusual size of fence and the number of trees that would be proposed.
Are you involved in the technical aspect as far as the amount of energy predicted to be produced by this project to that technical extent?
No.
So as this project went through a couple of revisions that ended up going to the planning board for consideration, you weren't involved in decision-making as to what minimum size would still make this an economically viable project for ASD Solar?
I provided the costs. Those decisions were made by other people.
When you say cost, you mean costs of construction?
Costs of construction.
Not necessarily costs of operation versus projected revenue?
No, none of those conversations.
Okay, so now I'm going to go to, again, to section 10.7.1 on page, again, 10-2. Now you were asked on direct examination about, I'm sorry, actually I'm going to go to 10.7.7 that we had talked about, the design requirements. Did you review the bylaws of the town of Wilbraham prior to offering advice or being involved in the application and the revisions?
No, as explained, the development process at that point was being led by Evan Turner and Jeff Brandt. My first real involvement in the project was at the first meeting. Many of the questions that usually arise at these meetings are to do with construction-related activities, how long it's going to take, how many deliveries, trucks moving, that kind of thing. Will there be noise, that kind of thing. So I was there to answer those questions.
So you would say Jeff Brandt was the individual on your team or with your team who was responsible for getting compliance with the bylaws of the town of Wilbraham?
In conjunction with Mr. Evan Turner.
Could I refer you now to section 10.7.9? I don't, Mr. Cook was helpful before. Could you perhaps, if you don't mind, reading that top paragraph?
The planning board shall review and act upon a proposed application to construct or materially modify a large-scale ground-mounted solar energy system in accordance with section 13.5 for site plan approval or in accordance with section 13.6 for special permits as applicable, and also taking into considerations the reasonable fulfillment of the following objectives.
Okay. Thank you. Did you, during your involvement with this project, up until the eventual denial by the planning board, ever refer to section 13.6 of the Wilbraham bylaws yourself?
I did not.
No. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you.
I have nothing else, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Cook, you're excused.
Would you like me to mute and stop video and the next witness will start again?
What's the plan next? Is Mr. Turner going to testify next?
Yes.
Mr. Turner is our next witness, Your Honor. I'm not sure what the court wants to do about breaking for lunch. It's noon now. I expect Mr. Turner will take a similar amount of time as Mr. Cook.
I'm pretty flexible here. I'm happy to keep going and break at 1, but if folks want to break now, we can do that. What are your thoughts?
Ms. Crowley, what do you prefer?
I'm fine with whatever you guys want to do.
Yeah, I do just want to warn people that I don't think we'll be breaking at 1. I think we started Mr. Cook around 10:30 and it is now noon. So even accepting for the little bit of a break, I think we're talking about an hour and a half. So I think the earliest we would be breaking is probably 1:45. So, which is fine with us, but if people want to take a break and eat some lunch, this is probably a good time to do that.
So you're suggesting that we wouldn't take a break in the middle of Mr. Turner's testimony? You like
I would prefer not to, Your Honor, if we can avoid that.
Okay.
I was thinking that if we waited until after lunch, if the plaintiffs believe direct going to be about an hour and a half, I anticipate if we could take a similar break of about 10 minutes and then maybe only 10 or 15 minutes at the most of cross is what I anticipate. And then we can decide maybe whether Mr. Pearsall is going to testify today.
Okay, so let's just plan it. So if we take a break now for lunch, how long do folks want for lunch? 12.
45 minutes, Your Honor.
So be back at 12:45, 12:50. We say 12:50. Then we're going to go till call it 3 o'clock, right?
That sounds right.
With Mr. Turner? Yeah.
Yep. And then Mr. Pearsall, Attorney Long, do you have any idea how long your cross-examination might take? I know that's a little tricky to ask. But.
Yeah, I think it probably depends more on Mr. Pearsall, but I think it probably makes sense, especially the way we're doing it now where he's going to be on the stand twice. I think we should probably start it to move things along.
Yeah, I'm a little.
I don't know if I'll finish.
I'm worried that if we don't keep going until 4:30, something for 4:30, we're going to run out of time with our 2 days.
I agree.
So
I truly appreciate that. If there's any way, if it's possible, that we could break for the day for 4 o'clock, just some personal
okay, so we'll
matters, but again,
we can finish at 4 o'clock, but let's take a break now till 12:50. We'll get back started with Mr. Turner and anticipate putting Mr. Pearsall on at least for the beginning of his cross-examination. Okay?
Just with apologies, Your Honor, we certainly don't want to make Mr. Marshall miss an appointment, but we will not agree. Obviously, we will do whatever the court orders, but we are not agreeing to stop at 4 today. We share the same concern that particularly now that Mr. Pearsall is being called twice, that 2 days will not be sufficient if we don't use the days allocated to us.
And yeah, and we were understanding it was going to be until 4:30 today. I mean, I'm ready to go on up until 4:30.
Ms. Crowley, are you okay to go to till 4:30?
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so why don't we do this? Attorney Marshall, why don't you, let's take a break now. Talk to, go figure out what your schedule looks like. I really don't want to try to fit in a third day. It's just really tricky because I only have certain days of the week that we have the courtroom to use, and we could be going into November or, something before we could finish this up. So let's try to get through till 5 today. And we can always start at 9 tomorrow morning too, if we need to, if it looks like we're running
Sure.
short of time, okay? But let us know whether 4:30 will work for you when we come back from break, okay?
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, so we'll break till 12:50.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And everybody's gonna pause there, stop their video and their mute. Thanks.